Morning, my name is Peter, recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. Before I get going, I just again want to thank the committee for having Jimmy and I here. All the speakers have been great. Looking forward to Christine just a little bit. Lee for taping, and Lee and Connie, Steve Lee and Connie. I said it yesterday, you guys are a class act. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. Yeah. I want to also, my wife and I travel a lot, and sometimes we speak together. Sometimes she's speaking, I play roadie, and sometimes I'm speaking, and she's my emotional support because I'm falling apart. And so it's been great. And, you know, part of I think Jimmy's going to lean on it a little bit of service. And just a quick story. I was sponsoring a guy in a town called Bellingham, Washington. I'd never been to the state of Washington. And this guy called me up and he says, hey, would you want to come speak at my group anniversary? And I reluctantly said, yeah, because I don't even know where, I never heard of Bellingham. This is going to be in a mountain somewhere, and I'm going to hear banjo music when I arrive. And so I get on a plane, and I fly to Washington, and I think I'm there, Seattle Airport, and it's about a 6-day trip to get to Bellingham, and it's raining, and it's cold, and it's damp, and I'm realizing I made a huge mistake, and I check into this motel, the 3-hour stay joints they put me in, and you had to put your money under a glass partition. They slide the key out, and I walked in the room. I said, don't take your clothes out of the luggage, just leave it in the luggage, and don't sleep on the bed. This is not good. And they had a potluck the next day, and I'm freezing. They say, open the windows, it's a beautiful day. And I'm thinking, these people are crazy. I mean, it's cold out. And in walks this blonde with a leather jacket on, and I forgot my name, where I'm from. And the next night at the meeting, we're just having some chit-chat in the kitchen, and she doesn't want anyone to think she's trying to pick me up and vice versa. We're trying to play it cool. But it was interesting. I thought she was married to what is her brother, and he kept asking me, what do you think of marrying? I said, oh, no, he thinks I'm trying to be cute here. And he sent me a few text messages. You like meeting Marion? Would you like to meet her? And I'm thinking, this guy's a little weird because he's talking about his wife. I didn't know they were brother and sister. And Mary and I got to talking on the phone, and we realized over our phone calls for a whole year that we're both musicians. We both love music. We both love Jesus. We both love AA. We've had, both of us, really challenging upbringings. And our first date in Bellingham, I took my sponsee and he took his sponsee because I didn't want it to be a date where you shack up. I had too much respect for her. And so a few years ago, we finally tied the knot and got married. And it's pretty cool when you know in your heart you marry your best friend. The moral of the story is do service for AA. You might come home with the wife. It's unbelievable. So, yeah. So I'm thrilled. It was interesting. My father met her 5 minutes. He was in love with her, and he hated everybody. So this was a good thing. Step 12, having had the spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. We try to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all my affairs. And hopefully by now I have more affairs than more principles than affairs. There's something I need to take a look at when I do step 12 or practice step 12 is when we talk about practicing these principles in all our affairs, I first need to take care of me in order to do that. You know, when you're on a plane and the flight attendants are giving you instructions, they put the mask on you first before you do anything else. So how could I possibly be of any assistance to anyone if I'm not taking care of me? My life is really one of service. I'm not a high service bored guy. but I sponsor a lot of people, always have. I've always had a sponsor. And I'm involved with my home group. And that's where God has me. It's a great place to be. But I do a lot of other things to take care of me in order to be a better husband to my wife, a better brother to my brothers, and member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Along that journey, I had to seek outside help for issues I shared over the weekend about, I had mommy issues because she died when I was a kid. She took her life. I had daddy issues because we never got along. I had sex issues because I was molested as a kid, and I show up here and I'm not doing good. And in terms of practicing these principles, the only principles I know is get them before they get you. So I don't know how to do sober life. But something happened along the way when I got a sponsor and started moving through the steps and got involved with helping other people. Something started to shift in me. My point of view started to shift on a lot of things, including who I was. There was a time in my life where I thought because I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous, I now had to have no pain, no fear, no resentments. I can almost levitate. And I resisted brokenness. And it was an aha moment one time. I remember after a prayer meditation, it just dawned upon me that it's the reason why I'm praying is because I'm broken and flawed. I'm so broken and flawed. And I embraced that for the first time with a tremendous amount of freedom I experienced in embracing my own brokenness. What we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, in my point of view, is a shared woundedness. It's a shared brokenness. When I talk to you about what it was like, you get it. In fact, as soon as I say my name is Peter, I'm an alcoholic, you already know me. You're just going to hear a story, because that's what we do. We tell stories on how I landed here. But you already got me. You know, I'm fear-based, insecure, I'm hypersensitive, I'm self-centered, I'm self-seeking, I have an ego dying to break out. You get all of it. And once I embraced that kind of brokenness, I realized that's what I identify when someone gives a talk, even their present brokenness and their current struggles. Because for me, I don't want to hear a speak up there so shiny and glossy and repeats everything they had. I'm not interested. I want to hear a solution. I love when people talk about their God freely in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't think we have enough of that. We're so afraid of offending people. But I love when they talk about their brokenness and their struggles in recovery. I get that. I lock into that. So that was my job, to understand how broken and flawed I am. It's the way God designed it. And when I'm speaking with the drunk and we tell them our story, we're sitting down with a cup of coffee and the drunk is rocking and rolling, he's not going to hear me talk about the fourth column and the fourth step. He doesn't get that. What he wants to know is, who are you and how did you get sober? Yeah, Bill and Bob sat with Bill Dodson in the hospital. They told him their story. That's me, I drink like that. So that's really important for me to understand and not to get away from that, not to get away from, quite frankly, step one. Page 58 says remember. Page 76 says remember. Page 77 says reminding ourselves. 3 times I have to do that because I just might forget. So I got to take a look at, do I have any current denial in my life now about certain areas of my life? What I like to do, my very first sponsor did this for me, and Mark did this for me, is go to page 52 and just go through the bedevilments and see what things are out of line. Where am I experiencing some current unmanageability? Because that has tentacles, and that begets more unmanageability. And little by little, I start to become consumed with me and my path, where I think I'm supposed to go to arrive. It is the very same path that's taken me away from you and away from God. So now in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm consumed with me, so I'm not really with you. And I'm home with my wife, I'm there, but I'm not really with her. And wherever I go, my aliveness is now deadened, and I have the rids, the restless, discontent stuff going on. And I forfeit every invitation that God is sending me because I can't hear it, I can't see it, I can't feel it, nothing. And faith starts to wane. When I'm taking care of myself, I have some spiritual muscles. Quite the opposite happens. And the great thing about faith, for me, it doesn't need an explanation. I don't need to debate with you. I don't need to argue with anyone because of faith. Faith is for me evidence of things unseen. You can give me all the evidence to the contrary. I'm walking around with my faith anyway. I don't have to debate with you. I love when you see religious folks argue with atheists. I'm saying, why argue? Why even debate? You got it, walk away. So I've had a life in Alcoholics Anonymous to a fault of being very rigid and structured. To a fault. Because I think I shared on Friday, I fell in love with that. And I was worshipped the things that point to God instead of the God that the things are pointing to. But after a while, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting older and hopefully a little bit better. I start to see the folly in some of that. In order for me to reach a drunk, I got to speak from the heart in order to touch theirs. As far as practicing principles in all my affairs, you're looking at someone who's broken and flawed. I would love to tell you I do this perfectly all the times. I fall right on my face sometimes, trip over my own feet. But I will tell you this, my wife is not afraid of me. I haven't raised, and I don't want to sound like I'm some chauvinistic big shot in the house. It's her house. I live there. Anyone who's married knows exactly what I'm talking about. I haven't raised my voice to marry, and I don't know how long it's been. And vice versa. We'd rather just talk it out. And what we do in the morning, I shared, I think it was yesterday, this thing happened organically where we just flush out our day. It's vital to me on this walk to let my friends, my family, my brothers, and my wife know how much I love them. And sometimes I don't have to say I love you. It's just in my actions. I've gotten to a point in my life at 66, I realize this is going fast. I mean, really fast. And I might have a lot more road behind me than in front of me. There's a lot more God in front of me than behind me, but it's fleeting. And I don't want to go to sleep at night with regrets. I should have cleaned that up. I should have told John O'Mara. I should have told my wife I love her, and I didn't because I was busy with other stuff. I can get so busy living life, working, sending reports in, getting to a meeting, meeting the newcomer, doing all the things that all sounds good on the table, but I'm missing life. Because it just turns out to be busy work. So I'm not really practicing principles in all my affairs. I'm covering my butt. I'm fronting wherever I go, so everyone thinks I'm okay, and I'm not okay. Not if my relationships are busted up. I don't want to be an AA angel and a house devil. And I'm just getting moved to talk about two things. One is, I'm from Brooklyn. Put narcotics in my arm. Could never stop drinking. Ate a ton of pills. I was a homeless bum. Literally a bum on the street in the back of an abandoned building. That's where I slept for a long time. Didn't bathe. Didn't change my clothes. I was that guy. I think about it now. I kind of shake because it's changed so much. And I land in Alcoholics Anonymous, and God puts a teacher in my life, a guy named Tony in Brooklyn, although everyone in Brooklyn is named Tony. There's about 18 Tonys in my family. But he puts this guy in my path, and this sponsor, this guy Tony, was not well received by a lot of folks in the area where I was going to meetings. And the reason why he wasn't received well is because everything he did came out of the book. He was one of the most rigid, to a fault sponsor I had, but we are also in discipline. I needed someone to cut away the fat and hold my feet to the fire. Otherwise, maybe I wouldn't be here. So he wasn't well received, but God put him in my life to kind of get me in the saddle and understand the importance of prayer, meditation, and inventory, and go and give it away. Go give it away. All of it, give it away. The whole thing, give away. And after about 8 years, I needed a new sponsor because that guy stopped doing what he was doing, and he started to go sideways. And for me, once someone breaks trust with me, it's difficult for me to get it back. And I was doubting him, I had skepticism, and I prayed. How I found a sponsor was, God, please show me a teacher. Lots of times, new guys come to me and says, can you help me find the sponsor? Yeah, do what I did. Go ask God. He knows better. It's too easy for me to go get him. Go see what God's got. I need to leave room for God on this journey. Yeah. And so I prayed, and there was a thing called Fellowship of the Spirit up in New York, in Queens, New York. And this guy, Joe H. and Mark Houston, were speaking. It's an interesting thing with Mark Houston. My friend Tom Needham, who's in a big meeting, this guy, he says, you got to listen to this guy. He gave me a cassette tape. And I listened to Mark, and I said, what an arrogant pompous. I can't stand this guy. I don't like him. And I put the cassette in the second time, and I says, I'm convinced he's an arrogant, pompous guy. But I listened to it a third time. I said, I think I love this man. He's got to sponsor me. And I approached him. And he said, absolutely. And he was staying in New York for a few extra days, and I went to my friend's house where he was staying, and we sat and talked. This guy was incredibly rigid, strict. Wouldn't take a phone call as out of inventory. He was one of those guys. But it's what fed my soul at the time. But what he did for me was open up the door to what step 3 is talking about, the depth of step 1 and the importance of 10 and 11 and the importance of being committed to a home group, one home group, and giving service and sponsoring people to survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Because money, he used to call me money, they're going to happen. You need drunks around you to work with. I remember him telling me he would call me really early in the morning, and I used to wake up at around 7 back then. I wasn't a 5 a.m. guy, and he was a 4 a.m. guy, so he'd call me at 5, wake me up, and I was trying to get the cobwebs out, and he'd be all lathered up about something. I later found out he already finished his hour of prayer meditation, and he'd call me, and he's, money, what's shaking? I says, nothing, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm not even up yet. And he says, what are you doing about the dash? I don't know. He says, what are you doing about the dash? And I says, Mark, I don't know what a dash is. He says, when you go to a cemetery, there's a headstone. And there's a person's name on top. There's a day God brought them here, and a day God took them home. Right in the middle is a 2-inch dash. That was their life, that's your life. What are you doing about the dash? I heard him. What am I doing about this? It's going to go fast. Playing AA cop or not being involved at all, or just pack into the stream of life and having a servant's heart. Mark passed away. Gary Brown took over. In that process, I had a guy like Don P. work me. This is not to name drop. I'm just showing God off for what he did for me. To me, these men were giants. I still think about the days that the phone calls with Don P. and sharing inventory with him. He was a great step 9 guy. And Gary was the most humble man I think ever in AA in my life that I ever met. And then there was a guy, Mickey Mussett, out of Colorado. And my current sponsor, Bob, who's basically an icon in this fellowship for me anyway. How does it doesn't make sense. And part of my point is Alcoholics Anonymous for me does not make any sense. Most of us should be still out there, calling home, bail me out, or dead. And it's a Sunday morning, we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and we're in a meeting. Doesn't make any sense. How does he get a guy like me, show up at Alcoholics Anonymous, do all this work, and suddenly I'm reborn? I have this conversion. I'm still a spoke in a wheel, but my point of view on everything has changed. My love for God has changed. I hated God on my way into Alcoholics Anonymous. That dad I talked about, when I was growing up, it was rough. My dad kind of made his version of amends the last few years of his life with me. He was rough on me. Not physically rough, but verbally rough, even abusive at times. And a control freak. And I woke up, I grew up gun shy, and my dad was just afraid of him. I knew how tough he was. I knew the crowd he ran with. There were no fireplace chit-chats between father and son. He'd throw money at every problem and expected you just to man up at 5. I didn't talk to my dad about anything. I was too afraid. He gave orders and I listened. Yes, sir, and move on. I'd rather not be in the same room with him. Then I got to a point where I despised him. I hated him. And every time I bottomed out, he showed up. Every time I bottomed out, he showed up. Every time I landed in ER, he showed up. Every time I got arrested, he showed up. And I got annoyed at him for doing that until I sobered up. And little by slowly, this walk that God gave me to take this, as our 12 steps says, homes, occupations, and affairs. Home first. Not occupation of fast first, but home first. Bring this awakened spirit there. And it gets to a point where I don't even have to consciously say, I'm going to practice principle in all my affairs. We've been made new. I can't do the other way anymore. God is incredibly contagious without even saying his name. And little by slowly, this relationship started to get together. And then we do step 9. And I sat with my dad, and my sponsor says, I'm not going to tell you when to go make amends, but that's God's job. But this one you may want to wait because your dad has seen it all and heard every false promise from you like it's going to be different. Walk this out a while. In the meantime, I'm saving money because it's interesting. You get sober and suddenly you're employed. And I start putting money aside, literally in an envelope in a top drawer, like to save up like $1 billion to start paying this guy back with lawyers and doctors and just all of it. He paid out of pocket my last 2 treatment centers because I didn't have insurance. It was a hefty bill to save my life. And I save up all this money, and I'm working with my dad, and we were meeting for coffee, and I asked him if we can go outside and talk. And he's, yeah. And we wound up sitting at this table anyway, and I began the approach of speaking to my dad without having to drag him through the mud, yeah? What Spirit does for me, I can't command the Spirit, but it's going to command me. It's going to move me. There's something in Scripture that says, don't worry about the words you speak. The Father will speak through you. I never prepared an amends. I just leaned all the way on God. Just tell me how to approach this guy. This is a tough character I'm dealing with. And so the words started to come, and I took the envelope out and I put it on the table, and my dad said, watch this. I said, if I can work out a deal with you to pay you. He pushed it back. And he said to me something I'll hold on for the rest of my life. He says, all I ever wanted was my son back. He didn't want the money. I had my first apartment, and it was a little studio. There was nothing in it. I didn't have a phone plugged in yet when I got there. I had a big book. I had a Bible. Someone gave me a sleeping bag. I almost killed myself getting in. I don't know sleeping bags. I almost strangled myself. I had some AA bumper stickers on the door. I'm a Catholic. I had a crucifix above the door. And that night I slept in a Ritz-Carlton because it wasn't a hallway. I was employed. I was a member of AA. I had a sponsor. I showered. I ate. I was going to work the next morning, going to another meeting that night. I mean, this was high living. And one Saturday morning, there's a ring at the doorbell. It's my dad. He's standing outside with a coffee pot and a box, the Mr. Coffee pots, and those little starter kits of dishes and cups and saucers on his other arm. And he's, can I come in? And I had a little tiny round table that sits one, and a broken chair and one of these desk chairs that was kind of missing a wheel. That's how I started out. And we pulled them together. I'm washing out the coffee pot, and I'm making the first cup of coffee. I'm sweating bullets. I mean, close quarters with this guy in a studio apartment. It felt like I was in a shoebox. He had these steel blue eyes that would melt anything. I pour a cup of coffee, and he's staring at me, and I'm fixing my collar, I'm fixing my hair. He thinks I'm drunk. I know it. Oh my God, I'm twitching, and oh my God, I'm dying 1,000 deaths. He's just staring at me. We talked a bit, and then he left, and a little bit relief. Fast forward months later, and he said to me something I'll never forget. We were talking about the time we had coffee. Remember we got your first apartment? Because I was a little bit more decorated by now. And we're just reminiscing a little. He says, that time, he says, I was looking at you. He says, I can't believe I was having coffee with my son who became a man. See, what he told me more than a few times, I remember the first time he told me, you keep doing what those people tell you to do. My dad would not turn me over to police. My dad would not turn me over to a psychiatrist. My dad would not turn me over to a priest. My dad would not turn me over to a therapist. He would tell them how to fix me. And he would say, that's my son, don't tell me how to raise him. Very strong about this. When I got sober here, he said, you do what they tell you to do. He turned me over to you because he had such trust in what he saw when he would come to an AA meeting when I celebrated a birthday cake. What he saw in the walk that God allowed me to walk, that showed me how to walk. Because you were carrying the message to a drunk like me. I'm not special. I didn't show up with a parade. I was another drunk walking in the door. Could have been missed. Nowadays we miss them because we're looking at our phones and Facebook. But back then we didn't have that. We were watching the door. Jimmy talks about all the time. We had get in the car days. We didn't care about who liked us on Facebook. We're looking for a drunk at the door, and they were looking for a drunk at the door, happened to show up. There's a new one, go get him. And anyone's around here a while, remember we used to circle away. You got a new one, you got a hot one. Don't let him out of your sight. And they showed me how to do this walk. After a while, I liked the effect produced by Alcoholics Anonymous in God. June 23rd, 1988, after collapsing in the hallway, I asked God, please take me from this. I don't want to die. Yeah? And my dad was in Atlantic City, New Jersey, with his wife. It was about, a 3-hour drive maybe to the Lower East Side. And he was awakened around 2 a.m. I'd start getting dressed, and his wife woke up. She said, where are you going? He said, I need to find my son. And she said, how are you going to find him? We don't know where he is. We haven't seen him in a long time. He said, I don't know. I just got to go find him. This is God connecting dots. Because I made the most sincere prayer I may have made in my entire life in that abandoned building. Please take me from this. I don't want to die. I'm not going to die anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. And my dad gets awakened at 2 a.m. and comes looking for me. And this guy used to drive through the hood with a little photo of me and pay off the crackheads and the winos and the junkies. $20, tell me what his kid is, my son, looking for him. And later that day, I'm standing on a corner, tore up from the floor, and my dad shows up in a car. He didn't scream at me, he just called my name. He got out of the car and walked across the street. And the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, Dad, I'm okay, I'm fine. And when he got to me, when our book talks about a roots grasp new soil, I collapsed. My whole body went limp. And my dad put his hands on my right on the hips, holding me up. There was nothing left. I weighed 130 pounds. I'm about 205 now. I got hepatitis C. I'm urinating blood. I'm dying. I'm dehydrated, the whole nine. I don't know what it's like to see your firstborn in that condition. It had to scare him to death. That was a skeleton. I reeked. And my dad's holding me up, and he kept saying something. I'm not going to lose my son to this. I'm not going to lose my son to this. He kept repeating this out loud, just hollering it out loud. And I landed. He took me to my 7 treatment center. And I remember I was about 10, 12 days in a place in Long Island, and they said, you need to get out of the Northeast, people, places, and things, which I thought was nonsense. It's very real. We're going to send you to Minnesota. And my dad and my brother took me to Newark Airport. And it was pre-9/11. You could walk all the way up to the gate. And I'm getting on the plane. I'm a shell of a man. I got a broken suitcase held together with black electric tape with my life in there and a plastic bag. And I'm wearing my kid brother's clothes. And as I'm about to get on that little, you go past to get onto that little walkway to get on the plane, I turn back. My dad was a bit messy. And my kid brother was just a mess. And he said to me, please get better. My kid brother, who idolized me, watched me fall apart. And when I sat in that seat, the impact of this whole war that I've been in hit me. And I don't know if it was put there then or maybe in a hallway, but there was something that was not really that tangible. I couldn't articulate it. There was something in me that any lens showed up. I can't do this anymore. I'm killing people. And about a year later, I was brought home. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, and I watched him go from 6'1", he shrunk. He was skin and bones. He was down to 115 pounds before he died. There was nothing left of him. And he knew it, and it was killing him to appear this way. Very proud man. And the last time I saw him, I was in this hospital where he was at, and he was sitting in a wheelchair, slumped over, and we're trying to have a conversation. I'm doing everything to help him not feel self-conscious. And he said, do me a favor, I don't want to call the orderly, and I can't get out of this chase. Can you put me in bed? I'll never forget this. I just leaned over to get him. And to get him up, my hands went under his arms. And he put his arms around my neck. I had this little moment of clarity that it was 30-something years ago. He did the same for me. And a woman in AA told me, she says, honey, I know this is difficult for you. But your dad got you for like 35 years sober. A sober gentleman in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because God and you showed me how to practice principles in all my affairs. I wasn't a dirtbag anymore. You know how many playoff football games my dad was saying, I'm having Sunday dinner, come on over, and he doesn't watch football. And dinners would last from 1 o'clock till like 8 o'clock at night. Just food keeps coming, you know. And you just sit at the table and gorge. I'll take it all day long. You know. And we had these conversations, and my dad says, I screwed up with you a lot. He said, I made a big mistake. Lots of mistakes. You were my first. I didn't have a manual. I was just trying to keep you away from getting burned, and I went too far sometimes. And my dad got real transparent with me, shared about his fears. He knew, looking at his own mortality, and when he knew he was going to pass it, we'd have these talks. And he kind of let me in. To a point where he became my hero, my best friend. I got to see, I think as Sandy says, what happened, what it was like, what happened, what it's like now, what we think happened, and what it was. I looked at my whole upbringing completely different. My dad was stuck with a wife who was a narcotic user, an alcoholic, and suffered from depression, commits suicide, and then yours truly picks up the band from there and keeps going. I mean, that'll devastate you on his outlook on life. And I had tremendous amount of respect for him, and God made it that way because I was able to practice principles in all my affairs because I had this spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps. Yeah? Seek the fellowship you crave. It's funny, when I got into this book with the sponsor, a lot of friends I had were really not friends. They went different ways, and my world got really small. And sometimes on this spiritual walk, it feels like it's a really narrow road and not many people are on it. But then you attract other like-minded folks, and the road gets crowded again. And you continue to grow in understanding the fact that you find a new pack of friends. Because the Spirit is the Spirit that's going to lead me. I don't command the Spirit. I've negotiated, I've argued with it, but I don't command it anymore. My whole day is a daily surrender and one of thanks. Surrender and thanks. Surrender and thanks. Relationships are really important to me. I have a few men in this room. We share the same sponsor. That's important to me. My relationships with the women in the AA are relationships with women in AA. I don't get cute. I practice fidelity to God. I practice fidelity in my marriage. It's important to me. My wife is not worried about me. My brothers don't worry about me the way they used to. And this has nothing to do with me. Trust me, this is all about God. I'm just trying to show God off a little bit. So none of this makes sense. I come in here and I've been transformed and revolutionized for better or worse. Some people don't like even me walking in a room and they go, no, it's him again. And other people say, hey, it's him, bring him in. I don't get attached to that. I just try in my little world not to harm anyone. I get upset when I'm upset at someone. I'll get out of your way with this. For me, it sums up this whole fellowship, this sacred fellowship called Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you haven't found out the sacredness of AA, my prayer would be that you stuck around long enough to experience the sacredness of what we do here for fun and for free. We don't care about color, religion, political party. You want to stop drinking, come in, we'll pour you a cup of coffee and change your whole life. For fun and for free, it doesn't make sense. But in the spiritual world, it makes perfect sense. I live by faith, not by sight. But this sums up AA. I got it out of a book someone gave me. The author is not an AA. It's not a self-help book. It's just a book about some spiritual principles. The book never resonated with me, but I saw this italicized writing. I took a peek at it, and that's why this book was given to me. There's a plaque in my home about this. It's one of my favorites. And this is us. It says this: may I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. That's my Alcoholics Anonymous. Steve, thanks for having me. That's all I got. Peace.
Hi, everybody. Jimmy, alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober. And, man, it's been a great weekend for me. Loved hearing everyone speak. Know all the speakers. Thanks to the committee who does this hard work. I do a big thing up in Jersey. I know if it looks easy, it's only because of all the hard work that goes on throughout the year. I commend the committee member who was willing or bold enough to put up his hand or her hand at one point and say, can we get half and half instead of powder milk? Believe it or not, we got cows in New Jersey, and that powder milk is what we used to put in little bags and sell it on the streets. Thank Mr. Lee, Steve, for being here, and Connie. I mean, look at the smile on Steve's face. It's not because he's up early listening to us. It's because Vanderbilt won yesterday. Yeah. Woo! I look forward to listening to Chris. It's great when you're at a conference and you're with a bunch of people that you like being with. It's just like, it's hanging out. I mean, that's all we're doing. It's just hanging out, sharing our experience, and I didn't know this until he spoke. I didn't know we had to qualify our marriage either. But I got a wife too, and she's right there, and I'm that guy that says I'll never get married again after I got divorced. I don't know. I was 13 years sober. I'll never get married. Who's going to get married? Who would go through that again? And then I met Mary Beth, and she was a kind of a friend. I didn't really know her. She belonged to the World Trade Center group. There was a meeting in the World Trade Center every day at 12:15. It was called the Tower Group. And on 9/11, when the towers came down, we lost a lot of us. And she was a member of that group, and she would invite us, all of us, to come over, do a little pitch, which became a cup of coffee, became a lunch, and became a proposal. And we'll be married 21 years this November, Time's flying. Seems like yesterday. Seems like yesterday when the towers came down. Useful and effectiveness. Am I useful and effective as an AA member? That's the question I got to ask myself. I love what Bill writes in the 12 and 12. What is this spiritual experience? What is it? It sounds so, especially if you're new. What are you talking about, this spiritual experience? I love the words that Bill puts to this, to explain it, and the promises that are inside of this. When a man or woman has a spiritual awakening, the most important meaning is now he or she has become able to do, feel, and believe that which he could not do before on his unaided strength and resources alone. He has been granted a gift, which amounts to a new state of consciousness and being. He's been set on a path which really tells him he's going somewhere. That life is not a dead end, not something to be endured or mastered. In a very real sense, he has been transformed because he's laid hold of a source of strength which in one way or another he had until now denied himself. He finds himself in the possession of a degree of honesty, promise, tolerance, promise, unselfishness, promise, peace of mind, promise, and a love, promise, of which he had thought himself quite incapable, promise. What he has really received is a free gift, promise, and yet usually, at least in some small part, he has made himself ready to receive it, promise. And that's what we promise to everyone who's in here right now, a new way of life. And I almost missed it like he just said. I almost missed the whole gift. I opened up this weekend with that meditation I listened to, and, Albert Einstein saying there's only, 2 ways to live your life. Live your life today like nothing's a miracle, or live your life like everything's a miracle. And I've been granted this gift, and it's my job, not perfectly, to go out there and try to carry this message to the best of my ability to the guy who's still sick and suffering. And not only that, like he just said, to practice these principles in all my affairs. So we've been given marching orders when we get to this point. And if I'm going to grow in understanding and effectiveness, I got to start passing this on, no matter what. Last year we did it, me, him, Marion, another guy from Jersey, Chris. We did this workshop in Long Island, in New York, and it was all about prayers and promises. And we had to go through all the steps, but really specifically drill down on the prayers that are in the steps and the promises that come out of that step. And at the end of that thing, I was thinking of this transformation that I've been given by God. And a consideration that I was once given by, I don't know if it was him or one of my old sponsees, but what they said to me was, Jimmy, I want you to consider this. Do you look at the people in your life, the situations in your life, and the circumstances of your life through the lens of a character defect or through the eyes of God? And when I thought about that, my whole life I've been looking at everything with tinted glasses. Anger, fear, rage, whatever you want to call it, jealousy, envy, all those character defects. And as a direct result of these 12 steps, a God of sometimes my misunderstanding, good friendships, and a fellowship that has grown around me, on most days I'm able to look at life with rose-colored glasses. Pretty grateful for the life I've been given, understanding that I have a miracle has happened to me, and the promises have come true. And I don't do this perfectly, none of us do. I fall off the bike. Am I willing to get back on the bike? It's really simple. We can complicate the hell out of this stuff. I come from an age when 12-step calls were the norm. Let's put it that way. And if you're not familiar with a 12-step call, this is how, and again, I grew up I got sober in the city, so there was a lot of opportunities. But, it would look like this, it would be about 12 o'clock at night, you're in bed already, and the phone would ring, and it's your sponsor. And he wasn't asking you what you were doing, he would just say to you, 10 minutes downstairs. And because you were so afraid of your sponsor, and you were downstairs in 10 minutes. He didn't care if you had work. He didn't care anything. 10 minutes downstairs. So you'd be downstairs, and all of a sudden, your sponsor and another old-timer would come by and pick you up with another young guy like me at the time in the car, and we're going to do a 12-step call. And we'd go to someone's apartment, someone's house. Somehow my sponsor or the other old-timer would get a phone call, a frantic phone call from a wife, and say, he's at it again, and here we go, the AA ambulance going to this guy's house. And we get to that house, and we all had instructions. My sponsor would look at me and say, hey, Jimmy, you need to go check for weapons because, there might be guns around, there might be knives around. Go check for that, make sure that's safely put away. He would maybe say to the other guy, go check on the wife, go see if the kids are okay. And then we'd all walk into the living room, and we'd watch the magic. And what the magic would be 2 old guys like Steve and Peter, and we would just sit there, and they weren't asking Joe how his day was going. They tell their stories. They tell them what happened to them. In a general way, they would talk about how their relationship with God through the 12 steps in Alcoholics Anonymous changed their lives. And then we'd ask that $64,000 question, do you want help? And if the gentleman said yes, we'd bring him to an AA meeting. Because we didn't have treatment centers like today back then. It makes me sound old. Very few detoxes back then, unless he was in a real medical emergency. We'd bring him to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and bring him to you. And back then, it was kind of weird, but I thought it was weird, but it was the norm. Everyone carried a half a pint or a pint of whiskey in your glove compartment. First time I saw it, we could do that? I didn't know that. But what I didn't understand was because this guy might go into convulsions or, we had to take him off the ledge, right? So we give him a few sips before we get to the meeting. And many times that guy never stayed sober, but many men did stay sober. And what we do is we bring them right into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm well versed in this idea of carrying a message to the drunk who's still wet. I'm 18 months sober. My life's kind of getting recreated slowly. I'm out of my mind, but my life is getting better. I'm back with the wife. I'm just back with the wife, and things are getting better. My health is getting back. I got this guy called Dad, like his, kind of like cut out of the same cloth. My dad's a lunatic. I hate my father. I love my father. I hate my father. I love my father. Don't understand why he acts the way he did growing up, the violence and all that other stuff. Come to find out a lot more about my old man after he passed, unfortunately, that we weren't able to have that sit down and talk about a lot of things. Because at 18 months sober, I went to my parents' house and I found my father dead on the floor. And at this point, my dad was really starting to like me. Or I was starting to like him, if that's even a way to say that. The ice started to melt because I brought you home to my dad. I brought this way of life home to my father. And he started to see a change in his son. My two brothers and my oldest sister, when they hit college, they never came back. And I was left with this guy, and he was left with me. And it was just it was problematic. But on this particular day, 18 months sober, I find him dead on the floor. I called my sponsor immediately, and I said, what do I do? And he goes, call 911 and let's pray. And my sponsor was praying. I called 911 and I was crying. And I'm waiting up there in my parents' home when the first cop shows up. And the cop walks into my house and he sees my dad and he pulls out a pad and he starts writing down information. He's writing down this information. He looks at me and says, hey, I don't see you walking the streets anymore. I said, yeah, I don't do that anymore. Taking down a little bit more information, he says to me, matter of fact, I don't even see you drinking on the corner or any bars anymore. I said, yeah, I don't drink anymore. And he goes, how do you do that? And I said, I go to this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm sober 18 months, and it seems to be working. Then all of a sudden, the cop starts talking about his drinking. That he can't control once he starts. And when he is stopped, he can't stay stopped because of this mental obsession. Not that he knew those words, but I knew those words. He was talking about how unmanageable his life was. How he got jammed up on the job a few times with his sergeant and the superiors on the police force. And all of a sudden, as he's talking about his drinking, I'm saying to myself, this guy needs help over my dead father's body. And I wind up 12-stepping this cop over my father's body. I'll tell you for this a reason. About 2 years ago, my home group, I have a big home group. The room is as big as this. A lot of people, pocket of enthusiasm. The girls are reading the book over there. The guys are reading the book over there. I'm up front lying about something to my sponsees. Probably about the Giants beating the Titans. Does that happen? I don't know. Well, that's easy to do. And I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around, this guy's looking at me. He goes, do you know who I am? I said, no idea. He goes, I've been looking for you. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I heard you moved, and I moved a long time ago. I'm the police officer that was with you on the day that your dad died. I said, really? And that day you told me, that next day you told me, because he wasn't living in the city, he lived outside the city. He said to me, I went to that meeting that you told me to, and I met those guys you told me about. And I'm here to let you know that I just celebrated 34 years of sobriety. No, don't clap. Clap for AA. Because I don't have the power to get anyone sober, and I don't have the power to get anyone drunk. But I'll tell you what happened that day. God will use you without your permission. I need a drunk not to drink. That's what the old timers would say. I need a drunk not to drink. Simplicity in that statement. But isn't that our basic service? One drunk helping another. And I don't know if I was going to drink on that day, But God knew that I needed a drunk on that day. And I've never seen the guy again. You know? The gift of sponsorship. I've had 5 sponsors since I've been here. That guy Richie that I told you about, he 12-stepped me to complete strangers, 12-stepped me in the middle of Newark Airport. He was my sponsor for the first 5 years. And like I said, it's a joke, but back then they didn't know the difference between a phone book and a big book. But that wasn't the point. They weren't jamming the steps down your throat because they didn't have that experience. But these were men that would be on your front porch in 2 seconds if you needed help for anything. And like I told you, on day 2, they went to a department store. They bought me clothes. They put me up in a motel. The kindness of strangers. Isn't that what we do here? We don't shoot our wounded. People come to our doors. We say, welcome, come in, get a cup of coffee, sit down. Right? Watch the door. The old Sam Shoemaker story or whatever you were reading. Right? Watch the door. That was like such drilled into our minds when we were new in AA by our sponsors. And that guy Richie was one of those guys. We went to 1,000,001 retreats. We did everything. Here's my biggest question. How do you go to a Yankee game or a barbecue or to the beach or to a concert and not drink? That was the major question in my life early on. I don't know how to do that stuff. And these gentlemen showed me how to do that stuff. And they would have barbecues and ball games. And back in the 80s, boxing was real big. We'd go to theaters and they had like pay-per-view on the screens, and everyone would be bombed around us. But there would be 8 or 10 of us, sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous, enjoying a boxing match. They showed me how to do that stuff. And this guy Richie, God rest his soul, he died with 37 years of sobriety. And then that guy Bill Grace that came into my life. And Bill Grace was a guy that came in from St. Paul, Minnesota, like in the same place as our sponsors. And he took me through the book for the first time, 5 years sober. I told you that story, what happened to Bill Grace was, back in the New York area where we're from, AIDS was a very big thing back in the 80s. A lot of men were contracting AIDS, whether it was from their lifestyle or from shooting dope or whatever they were doing, and Bill had AIDS, and he was as big as me. And by the end, he was like a pencil. And he had lesions all over him. And the cocktail wasn't out yet where it was helping these guys or these women that had, HIV. And Bill gave up. The trials and tribulations of life. Bill gave up on life. And he wound up drinking and he wound up dying. But he was the most important person in my life because he took me through this book. He was the first man to take me through this book. And then I moved out of the city and we moved down to the shore where we live now. And I met my third sponsor. And I struggled looking for a sponsor because now I'm introduced to this way of life, and I know I don't need a don't drink and go to meetings guy. I know, and I'm not knocking that at all. I just mean I needed someone who was structured and someone who could just keep on helping me. And there was an old timer, and my dad was a butcher, like I told you. My dad was, like I said, he had blood on him all the time. I don't know what he was doing, but. So there was an old-timer back then, and he just recently passed like a couple of years ago with 57 years of sobriety, and I used to like what he used to say in the meetings all the time. So I went up to him one day, I said, hey, what do you do for a living? He goes, I'm a butcher. Got it. And he was my sponsor until I blew up my life at 10 years sober and, lied to him a lot and almost drank at 13 years. It's really hard to live a dishonest life in here and think you could live spiritually and practice these principles. 13 years, I walked into a bar, fed up, sick and tired of being sick and tired, ordered a drink. Bartender put the drink on here. I understand what Dr. Bob talks about when he says he was stuck between a rock and a hard place because I didn't want that drink, but man, I needed that drink. Devil and the angel, drink it, don't drink it, drink it, don't drink it. And all of a sudden a hand went around the glass, pulled it back, and when I looked up, the bartender there was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, what are you doing? Apparently throwing my life away. And I'll show you what the human ego does, because 2 weeks later I walked into this workshop down the block from my house in this church. Right? Now I wanted a drink 2 weeks ago, but 2 weeks later, I'm in a meeting, and I see him for the first time in my life. And he's up there doing what he does, and I'm saying, this guy's too good to be true. And I'm judging him. See how the human ego works? I want to drink 2 weeks early, and 2 weeks later, like, look at this guy, you know? But by the end of the meeting, I think the way he says it, I had him in a headlock and said, you will be my sponsor. And then for the next, I don't even know how long, 15, 16, 17 years, you know. Then I got tired of him, got rid of him. We're very close, and it's funny how it all full circle, you know. Bob's my sponsor, and now Bob's his sponsor, and Bob's Steve's sponsor. And Bob's a very different kind of guy than, you know, I can call him up and speak for an hour about whatever. Bob, you got about an 8-minute window, you know, and right? Is that being generous, 8 minutes? You better be ready to talk fast, because the next thing you're going to hear is, Bob, you there? Bob, you there? He clicked off a while ago. But we love him. We love him. So, what time are we going to? Oh, okay. It's really, what's the right word? Amazing sometimes the path that God put you on. Doesn't really care what you think or what you want to do, you know. And I'll tell this story. It's 2005. I have a home group. My wife has a home group. And we want to start a new home group in my town, because we're both out of town going to home groups. So we want to start a new home group in my town. A big book meeting. A 3 legacy meeting. You know, we're involved in Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. And so I got 12 guys together, or 12 men and women together in my house, and we formatted what we want to do, like on the anvil of our experience, just like build, wrapping out the traditions on the anvil of experience. And when we formatted what we wanted to do, this study group, we went to prayer, and we prayed that 30 people would show up to our home group on the first night. And on January 6th, 2006, January 22nd, 2006, we opened up the doors of the Design for Living group. And 175 people showed up the first night. And we knew to get rid of the tables immediately, and we need more chairs, obviously. And up till COVID, we were averaging anywhere between 250, 300 people every Sunday night for a book study. A pocket of enthusiasm. And after we go through the cycle, we would do a 3-week traditions workshop. We go through the cycle, we did a 3 weeks concepts workshop to introduce people who don't know what world service is all about. And we were just doing it and doing it and doing it. And the meeting's great. It's still going on. We'll be celebrating 20 years this January. But we were a meeting that wanted to become a group. And I hope you know the difference between the two. And so after a year, we said, okay, we're going to become a group. And in order to become a group, we need a general service representative. So who would like to be a GSR in our group? And nobody raised their hand. And then a strange thing happened. 19 years sober. I don't like crap. I don't like doing service crap. I don't want to do anything. I'll make coffee and set up chairs, but I'm not doing anything else. All of a sudden, my hand starts to go up. You ever have this conversation? What the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? And I become a GSR for the first time at 19 years sober. And I don't know any of that stuff. Total fear. Total fear. Because my ego is, I'm 19 years sober. PD Boy's my sponsor. You know, I don't need all this. And here we are. So I go to this thing called the Northeast Regional AA Service Assembly. I don't know. I know you guys have one of those things out here, but you call it differently. It's called Nebraska on the East Coast. And I go to this thing in Hunt Valley, Maryland. There's 1,800 people, all the service junkies, GSOs, delegates, committee chairs, you name it, DCMs. And I walk in like a square peg in a round hole at 19 years old because I am totally afraid of what you guys are doing. I'm so top-sided in a two-sided, of a three-sided triangle and only two sides. Yeah, I sponsor a ton of guys. I take guys through the book. I do a lot of service work in that way. A lot of home group service, but nothing ever outside my group. And I walk into this thing, and I'm terrified. And I meet these two guys from Jersey. I thought they were just two old guys from Jersey. Who knew? One was a past United States trustee at large, and the other one was a past Northeast regional trustee. I thought they were just two old guys. But they brought me under their wing. And this one guy, John, became my service sponsor. And that's just a term we throw out there, service sponsor. He was the guy that just had an experience that was going to help a guy like me, you know. And the first thing he does is he hands me the service manual, a real barn burner if you need something to read on your flight home today, you know. He goes, I only want you to read one thing. I said, what's that? He goes, turn to S20. This is the old manual. And there's an excerpt in there. Why do we have a conference? Why do we do the things we do in Alcoholics Anonymous? And it's written by Bernard Smith, who was Bill Wilson's personal lawyer, and he was a Class A non-alcoholic trustee, and him, along with Bill, put our structure together so we could be sitting in Nashville, Tennessee today. The dots are connected, believe it or not. And so in this little excerpt, it says, we do the things we do. We have a conference for this reason, not to ensure our sobriety. We're here. Everyone in this room knows what to do when someone new walks in your doors. You grab them. You grab her. You sit them down. Sponsorship, steps, all the things we do, right? But why we do the things we do in Alcoholics Anonymous is not for the person who's here. It's for the guy right now in Nashville, Tennessee, on Broadway, who's probably working on his second drunk at 9:30 in the morning, who doesn't know we're in here. How are we going to get that guy? Right now, somewhere in Nashville, Tennessee, there's a single mom who has 3 kids that can't wait to put those kids down to sleep so she can crack that bottle of wine and wash her day away. So Alcoholics Anonymous is really about carrying a message to the alcoholic who still suffers. And how do we do that? Well, we do that in a lot of different ways. We have committee work. We have PI. I know a lot of you guys probably go out to the local jails, treatment centers, carry the message in that way. I love what Tom Iverson used to say. Harold says it all the time. Tom Iverson said, you should always be bringing a meeting back to a place you don't want to wind up. I've been going to a treatment center. My home group has a lot of commitments to treatment centers, regular AA meeting, but there's this one treatment center that I like to go to, like on a monthly basis, to carry the message. So I get to do that. And so what happens to me is I become a GSR and I start to go down that inverted triangle. If you understand what that is, the groups are on top. Who's in charge of AA? You, the groups. Not any individual, not any meeting. The AA groups are in charge of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we filter it down all the way down to our corporations, which is the AAWS, which does our literature, and the Grapevine. But we have delegates, we have trustees, all that stuff. And I started to work myself way down that aisle. And all I did was make myself available. Raise my hand. And I became an alternate, DCM, a DCM, alternate area chair. I remember when I became the area chair, I called up Bob, and Bob's a past delegate from when the dinosaurs were walking around. Bob was a dinosaur, prehistoric days. And he said, and this was his sponsorship in that moment. He says, I only want you to do one thing. I said, what's that? He goes, make sure you bring your recovery to your service work. And in my head, I said, great line, Bob. I'll hopefully remember that. Until I became the area chair and I was chairing my first assembly, I'm like, holy shit, now I know what he's talking about. Bring your recovery to your service work. And then I got elected as an alternate delegate, and then I served my area, Panel 71 delegate to the General Service Conference, a real honor and treat, like 2021 to 22. First year was virtual because of the pandemic, but the second was in Brooklyn. Down in Brooklyn Heights, probably one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world. And we're down there, a bunch of drunks. 135 of us at the General Service Conference. And I'm the closest living delegate at that conference. I was the closest living delegate to that hotel, even closer than the guy that was from the New York area. And I didn't decide. I drove to Brooklyn from my house. It's about 60 minutes, 60 miles. And as I was driving to the General Service Conference, I drove up through the town that I grew up. Jersey City, New Jersey. Second biggest city in the country, in the state. And I said, let me just drive through the old neighborhood. I haven't been up here in a while. Remember when you grew up, everything seemed so big where you grew up? Everything was so small when I drove through there. And the first thing I did was I passed that house where the tornado lived. I passed that house. It was a two-family house, 7 of us on the first floor, my family, my aunt and my uncle, my cousins on the second floor, 1 bathroom, 1 phone. How the hell we do it? Very easily, it seems. I drove to the first bar I ever drank in at 15 years old. Back then, if your chin could hit the top of a bar, you were getting served in bars. Wally's. Good old Wally's. And I remember about that first drink. And then I drove through the town, the streets that I walked aimlessly for almost 2 years of my life, living on the streets. And I couldn't stop crying. I can't believe what you guys have done for me and what a God of my understanding has done for me. That's just a short period earlier, living that way of life. And now I'm driving to the General Service Conference to make decisions for our fellowship that's saving lives on a daily basis. And whether those decisions are right or wrong, it doesn't make a difference. We all have opinions. We all have, things we have to look at in our own way. Everyone comes from all over the country, United States and Canada. We all have a lot of different ideas about a lot of things about carrying this message. But the bottom line is, I could tell you about the traditions. I could tell you about the concepts. I could tell you about a lot of things in Alcoholics Anonymous. But if you put it all in a funnel, and when it comes out of that pipe, AA is about one thing and only one thing. One drunk talking to another. Sharing experience, strength, and hope. And that's step 12. And that's being useful in effectiveness. When the pandemic hit, that was the big question. If you guys were around, that was the thing we talked about. Can we be useful and effective on a virtual platform? I'm not going to answer that. I have my own opinion about that. But I know when I'm sitting knee to knee with somebody, when I'm sitting eyeball to eyeball, I can't think of anything greater in my life than this gift, this precious gift. So the question I walk away this weekend is, what am I doing with this precious gift? Is it really a miracle? And if it is a miracle, what am I doing with the miracle that God has given me? I think that's all we have. So thank you very much.